meeting is being recorded.
Hi everyone, welcome into the webinar. It's 7 o'clock right now, but we're just going to wait a minute or two just for more participants to join. So yeah, just hold tight. All right, hi everyone. I am Grace Halstead. I am the Community Outreach Intern here at MadiSUN. Thanks for coming on this nice night. So yeah, I guess we'll get started with the MadiSUN Solar for Home. Feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A function. We'll try to answer those in real time if they pertain to a certain slide. If we don't get around to those, or you have maybe just more overarching questions, you can send them in the chat as well, and we'll try to get to those at the end. So yeah, as with that, I will pass it over to my colleague Sam.
Thanks, Grace, and thanks everyone for joining us on this lovely evening, as Grace pointed out. It's a great night for solar, and we're going to be talking tonight all about solar for your home, how solar works, some reasons to go solar, finances, and some other things as well. I also have with me my colleague here from Arch Solar, Stanley Minnick. Stanley works for Arch Solar and is one of our two solar installers with the Group I program. So Stanley, if you want to introduce yourself quick, go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, and thanks to Renew and the City of Madison for putting this on. My name is Stanley Minnick. I've been in solar for around 12 years, lived in Madison for about 13 and a half. Really excited to be part of the MadiSUN Group I. Arch Solar has been doing solar in Wisconsin since 2003, and we have our office and warehouse in Madison over on Von Braun Road. So as long as we're not out doing site visits, you guys are all welcome to stop by. And if someone is really interested in seeing a system installed, I might even be able to open up the garage and show some of you my system sometime as well. So thanks for coming. Look forward to helping answer any questions y'all have.
Great, thanks, Stanley. So that's Stanley. I'm Sam. Like I said, I'm the Distributed Resources Director here at Renew Wisconsin. Renew Wisconsin administers the MadiSUN programs on behalf of the city. We're a renewable energy advocacy organization. We do a lot of renewable energy policy work, some legislative work, and some general education and outreach and programs as well. So I just want to kind of go over our agenda tonight and So we're going to talk a little bit first about how solar works, some of the kind of the engineering, the components of the system, and how it works in coordination with your utility as well. We're going to talk about some reasons to install solar. Whatever reason you have doesn't really matter to us, but we're just going to point out some reasons why installing a solar system on your home is a really good idea, both economically and environmentally, as you can probably guess. Then we're going to shift the focus a little bit over to the economics and the incentive side. We're going to talk about how much these systems cost, and we're going to talk about some of the incentives that will make it more affordable for you as well. One of the things about a solar group buy, is that we kind of help you out through the process. There's not a lot of people out there that have purchased solar before. So it's not something you can kind of, go to your neighbor or go to your brother or your cousin or somebody like that and say, hey, who did you install solar with, like you can with, like, say, a car or a oven or a microwave or something like that. So we just try to provide a little bit more education for you as well. After we talk about economics, we're going to go on to the actual process itself, kind of talking about what you actually have to do to get solar installed on your roof. And then at the end, we're going to leave time for some questions and answers as well. So let's shift gears and talk about how does solar work. I think there's a little bit of a misconception that, solar, while it has certainly increased in interest over the last few years, the technology itself is actually pretty old. It's close to about 100 years old. The solar photovoltaic, or PV, what we call it for short, technology was actually discovered back in the early 20th century. It's a really pretty simple and straightforward process. There's really only two components that make up a solar PV system outside of some racking and some other wiring components. And those two main materials are the solar module, which I'm sure most people are probably familiar with, and an inverter, which is kind of the behind the scenes player. Sort of, we have like the solar module. If the solar module is our actor in this play, the inverter is kind of like the director or the producer. So the solar module, like I said, is probably something most people know about. That actually does the work of converting the sunlight into electricity. It does that through a chemical reaction. So there's basically two layers of silicon. And what happens is when the sun and the photons shine through those layers of silicon, they excite the electrons inside that. Those electrons are then channeled into some wires, and then those wires go down into your inverter, where they flow into your home and they flow into your lights and things like that. Because this is a chemical reaction, because there's no real working mechanisms that are happening, the solar panels tend to last a really long time. All of the panels that are offered through our group buy have a 25-year warranty. They typically last a lot longer than that, just sort of like a warranty on a car. You usually, or at least the people I know, typically drive their car a lot more miles past their warranty. And they're typically about the size of a door. So if you're trying to imagine, how many panels can fit on your roof, just kind of think about if you took, a bunch of doors and put them on your roof, about how much room you'd have. So that's kind of how a solar panel works. The inverter is a little bit different. So that converts the DC electricity, which is what the solar panels make, into AC, or alternating current electricity. And AC is what typically all of our appliances, all of our electronics use. So the inverter, like I said, kind of does the behind the scenes work. It does have some abilities to connect to monitoring equipment. So if you want to know how much your solar array is producing at any given time, there's ability to tap into that information as well. There's also something that we call micro inverters. So it sounds just like what it is. It's an inverter that's much smaller. So this one here typically will be, either inside or outside of your home, probably pretty close to your electric meter or possibly your circuit panel. Microinverters just much, much smaller. They're typically on or right next to the solar panels themselves, and they do the same thing. They convert the DC current to electric or to alternating current, and that's how those function. Most folks now, most solar installers are now going with microinverters, but this is just a way of showing kind of how that looks. So let's tie everything together. And when we talk about solar arrays, 99.9% of the time, we're talking about a grid-tied solar array. And what does that mean? I think a lot of people maybe that aren't super familiar with solar might have a misconception that if they go solar, they're off grid, they're able to make, able to control their own destiny, so to speak. That scenario is a possibility. But it actually costs a lot more. Typically, unless you're at a cabin or you're at a facility or something that's already doesn't have a grid connection, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for you to disconnect from the grid. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute here. But when we talk about our grid-tied solar arrays, this is essentially how they work. So the first step, as you can probably guess, the sunlight, the photons from the sun strike those solar panels. It gets, like I said, turned into direct current or DC electricity. That then goes down to number 2, where our inverter is at. The inverter again converts the DC electricity into AC electricity. And then it goes on to number 3, which is your home use, your lights, your appliances, your electronics, and things like that. So when the sun is shining, that's how the system works. A lot of times, especially in the summer months, June, July, and August, in the middle of the day, when we get a lot of sun, you're actually going to be producing more electricity than what you need. So that then is going to go to number 4, which is where the excess electricity that you create is sent out to the grid. And then at night or cloudy times or other periods when your home is consuming more electricity than what your solar array is producing, you'll pull energy in off the grid, just like you normally do now. So having a grid-tied array is really great because basically your home, your lifestyle, everything you do is able to flow and function continuously. You don't have to worry about if there is enough sunlight or if you have enough battery backup or things like that. It's really great for just being able to, do things at night, like, stream Netflix or something like that. So this is one reason why it's really great to have. The other reason, and I'm going to get to that in a second, is because of a policy that we call net metering. So when your solar array is producing more electricity than what you need, that electricity, like I said, flows out onto the grid. And what happens with your meter, and this is sort of an analog meter, when you get solar installed, typically it's a digital meter. But what will happen basically is just like that sun there, your meter will dial backwards. And there's the sun again. And then at night or at other times when you're drawing electricity from the grid, your meter will dial forward like it always does. And then at the end of your billing period, typically that's on a month-to-month basis, your utility will bill you for the net of your meter. So let's say, for instance, in a given month, you send 600 kilowatt hours of electricity to the grid and you consume 700 kilowatt hours. You basically will just have to pay for 100 kilowatt hours plus whatever your connection fees are. So it significantly reduces your utility bill while not having to have something like a battery backup. So this is, in a way, almost essentially like a virtual battery. And that energy can be banked from day to day. And in some cases, like folks who are in MG&E territory, we can even bank that energy from month to month. I use this term rollover electricity. Grace and I were just talking about it before we came on. It's sort of like rollover minutes on a cell phone for folks that are old enough to understand that analogy. But this is how it works. We're basically able to bank that extra energy that we make during the daytime and use it at night. And this is maybe actually a better representation here of what net metering looks like. So this is a time graph for a whole day of a real person's solar output. So this area in green right here, this is where that person's solar array is producing electricity. So the sun comes up, I think this is in September. So the sun comes up right around 7 a.m. It generates electricity increasingly until about 1 p.m. And then as the sun starts to dip in the horizon, that energy decreases until it goes away in the evening time. The area in red is where this person's home is consuming electricity in real time. So as you can see, there's a lot of spikes here, a lot of valleys. This big use right here might be maybe in the morning time where they're, maybe making coffee or making breakfast or what have you. There's a lot of spikes here in the evening time as well. That could be anything from, maybe AC tripping on to a computer or a TV or a refrigerator or something like that. The main thing to take away from this graph is the area in blue. That is what is called self-consumption. So that is where the solar that's being produced is being consumed in real time. So as you can see, that area in blue is actually pretty small, especially when compared to the area in green or the area in red. So the thing that net metering does is it basically allows us to take that area in green and kind of smooth it out and smush it down into that area in red and sort of negate all of those kilowatt hours that we had to take off from the grid. So another reason why, not only from a sort of upfront cost perspective, but also from an ongoing cost perspective of why net metering and having a grid tied array, I should say, is really important. I think a lot of people don't think too much about how going off grid really would have to change your lifestyle entirely. So this is why grid tied arrays and why net metering is super important. So the last thing I want to talk about before we move on is when we talk about kind of how the process works is what makes for a solar ready home. So there's a few things that we look at when we're evaluating customers' homes. And the first thing that we look at is what does your roof look like? And specifically, is your roof unshaded? If you have trees, other buildings, other objects that are shading your roof, as you can probably guess, that's going to cut into your solar production. So the more sunny, the more open, the more unshaded your roof is, the better. The second thing we look at is the age of your roof. We do this for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that it's actually much more cost effective if you have a new roof. Going back to talking about the warranty on those panels. So the panels are warranted for 25 years. We expect the systems to last at least that long, if not longer, maybe 30, 35, maybe even 40 years. And that is about as long, maybe even longer than your typical shingle roof. So if you have an older roof, we recommend you get it replaced. If you have a new roof, that's great. If you have a roof that's kind of in between, that's a little tricky. You can certainly, replace your roof in the middle of your project, but that is going to cost more money because you're going to have someone come and disconnect the solar panels, disconnect the racking, redo the roof, and then reapply the racking and the panels as well. So it is doable. We just don't recommend it because it's going to cost you more money in the long run. If you're going to have to replace your roof, you might as well do it at the beginning and save yourself some time and some money and some headaches as well. The third thing we look at is the orientation or the direction, I should say, that your roof faces. And this actually used to be the first thing that we looked at. As little as 4 or 5 years ago, essentially roofs had to face south or maybe slightly southwest or slightly southeast in order to really make solar a viable option for most folks. Now, thanks to increases in technology, thanks to those net metering policies that we have in place, east and west facing rooftops are okay for the most part. They'll probably produce enough electricity for you over the year to offset your needs. Of course, it's going to depend a little bit about how far east or west it faces, kind of the slope of your roof as well. But for the most part, if your roof slopes east to west and it's unshaded, it's going to be totally okay. You're going to totally be able to make enough electricity to offset your needs. And then the last thing I want to talk about is something that kind of gets looked over a little bit. You want to get an energy home. And that doesn't mean that you have to totally replace everything. But, if you have some low hanging fruit, if you're still on incandescent light bulbs, if you still have, appliances that are several decades old, you might want to think about upgrading those first. If you're able to reduce your energy consumption, you're going to save money in the long run. I always like to tell people that the kilowatt hour you never use is going to be the cheapest one you ever have to buy. So if you make your home a little bit more efficient, then you can be able to purchase a smaller array. That's going to come at a lower cost, and your cost savings are going to be hopefully improved from that as well. So that is all I have for kind of the how solar works, but I'm going to let Stanley jump in here because Stanley is the technical expert, and I want to give him a chance to correct anything I've said, or maybe tack on to anything I've said as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I think every time you've done these, they've gotten better. One thing I would reiterate was the comment about microinverters. I think that both ourselves and the other contractor, Full Spectrum, that's in the group buy, I think both are using microinverters. So each of your panels is going to have an inverter underneath of it, and that's going to give you advantages if you do have a little bit of shade and in circumstances where there's lower light. So yeah, I thought on the technical side, you really hit all the key points. Are you going to talk about snow losses at all?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. You're stealing my thunder.
Sorry, I was trying to set you up.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit more now about reasons to install solar. And Stanley kind of hinted on a few things. We do live in Wisconsin. This isn't, the Southwest. It's not California. It's not Arizona. That's what a lot of people say when I talk to them about solar is, can this really possibly work in Minnesota? Can it really possibly work in Wisconsin? I said Minnesota because the very first slide, you may have noticed there is a picture of a solar array with snow and a tractor. That's actually my parents' solar array in northern Minnesota, not even Minnesota, northern Minnesota. And that photo, I wish we could go back to it. We'll see it at the end again, but it's to demonstrate that even here in the upper Midwest, solar is now, thanks to technologies and thanks to policies that are in place, it is viable. And it's become affordable too over the last decade or so, partly because as a country, as a nation, as a world, really, we've been installing so much more solar. So as you ramp up production, as you increase that, we're able to bring the cost per unit down. So that's sort of what's happened to solar here in the last 10 years or so. So this is a graph. Those bars represent the cost of solar since, looks like 2014 here. So as you can see, for the most part, we've been on a decline. If you can go back all the way to like 2010, that decline would be even steeper. But the costs have come down a bit, especially the hardware costs. As you can see, last year and actually even a little bit into 2020, those costs did tick up a little. Part of that was because the new electric code was put into place. But for the most part, solar has now become, pretty viable, at least on the residential level, even more so at the utility level. And that green bar there represents sort of where the soft costs have gone to. So like I said, as we install more solar, those prices have been able to come down. And while they are not continuing to come down, it's definitely affordable now for most people. I mean, everything is kind of going up in price now, as we know. And solar is definitely not immune to that as well. Solar is also, though, super reliable. Stanley was talking about snow. This nice GIF here is about hail. So I'll start there. The panels are actually a lot stronger, a lot more tough than most people think. They can withstand golf ball size hail. They can withstand some really strong wind gusts as well. Typically now panels are flush mounted to the roof. So if you are in your neighborhood and you see a solar array that kind of looks a little awkward, maybe looks like elephant ears, that's typically the sign of an older array. So now, thanks to newer technologies, thanks to more efficient panels, most of the solar that's installed is flush mounted to your roof. So you really can't notice it very much at all. And that actually helps also for some of these meteorological issues that might come up as well. The big thing that I think most people are concerned about, and like I said, Stanley did hint on this a little bit, is snow and snow load. In the winter, you are not going to make as much electricity from your solar panels as you would in the summer. And that's for a couple of reasons. First reason is simply that we don't get as many sunny hours here in Wisconsin in December, January, and February as we do in June, July, and August. The second reason for that is, of course, snow. If snow falls on those panels, especially if we get a heavy snowstorm, especially if we get a heavy snowstorm followed by a cold snap, your panels are not going to make electricity for several days, maybe even a few weeks. The good thing about that, or I should say the good counteract to that is, as you can see, panels are typically a darker color. They're almost always black. Some of them are navy blue. And of course, they're always installed at an angle as well. So typically what will happen is your panels are going to stay a little bit warmer. The snow is going to melt a little bit faster than it would on, say, the ground or the rest of your roof. And eventually that snow is going to melt and slide off, and then you're going to continue to produce electricity again. But like I said, if we get a snowstorm, and especially if it's a heavy snowstorm, you are going to be without the electricity from those panels for some period of time. And that's another reason, again, why it's really great to have a grid-tied solar array. The other little caveat that I'll add in here is when Stanley, when Arch Solar, when Full Spectrum Solar, pretty much when any decent solar developer is giving you a proposal, they will actually budget in a little bit of snow loss during the winter months into your proposal. So if they say, you're going to produce X amount of kilowatt hours per year, they're actually subtracting a little bit there for the snow loss during the winter months. Another reason why it's great to install solar is it creates homegrown jobs. So these are jobs, these are positions that can't be outsourced. We need folks on the ground putting these solar arrays into place. This right here is a picture of my good friend Michael from Midwest Solar. So this is just another reason why installing a renewable energy system like this is great, because we produce jobs here, jobs in our own communities, good paying jobs that can help benefit our local economy. So yet another reason why installing solar on your home is a good idea. Sorry, my mouse is not working here. The last sort of reason I want to point out for installing solar on your home is slightly more of a selfish reason, and that is solar will actually increase the value of your home. This was a study done out of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Colorado. Similar studies, however, have been done all over the country, not just from the Southwest, that show that essentially, if you put solar on your home and you and let's say your neighbor whose home happens to be, about the same size, about the same age, things like that, your home is likely going to sell faster and for more money than your neighbor's home. And that makes sense. If you are a prospective home buyer and you're looking at two homes that are, like I said, about the same age, about the same size, and you see, home A has a utility bill of $200 per month and home B has a utility bill of, let's say, $50 per month, that makes that decision a little bit easier, right? Wouldn't you rather have the home that's going to save you $150 per month in electricity costs? I certainly would like to do that. So this is another reason why going solar is a good idea, because it basically just increases the value of your home. And we're going to get even more into the economics here in just a second, but I want to say hi to another presenter that I have on the call with me tonight, and that is Jason from Green Penny. Jason, I'm going to let you talk before we get into all the ooey gooeys of the economics, and going to let you talk a little bit about Green Penny Bank and what you folks offer over there.
Well, very good. Thanks so much, Sam. Hi, Stanley. Nice to see you virtually as well. Hi, everyone. I'm Jason McDuff. I'm with Green Penny Bank. We are very excited to be a finance option for the MadiSUN Group Buy program. And thanks so much to Sam and the team at Renew Wisconsin for including us. They're fantastic partners, and to Stanley as well. So we offer residential financing, which I won't go into all the details because there's a lot of information that you're getting about solar in general, but an important way that we're all going to collectively make a significant renewable energy adoption rate happen in our communities across the Midwest is a lot of it's going to have to be financed. And what we at Green Penny endeavor to do is make it economical. We also endeavor to provide really good community bank type service. So when you're ready and you want to talk about your financing options, you're welcome to go to greenpenny.com to learn more about how we do that. And also, or you're welcome to call 888-G-PENNY-0, 888-G-PENNY-0, and you'll speak with a live banker Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time. We answer the phones live, and Kelly or Sarah or Carissa or Lori or Bethany or Wesley or a number of our lenders will be there to help you and answer questions about how this financing works, because it's a bit different than other types of financing. We try to make it as a starting point. We want borrowers, homeowners to be able to trade a utility payment that they're paying today for, once the solar is installed, a financing payment that hopefully you will pay off very soon or as soon as you're able to. And then you'll enjoy many, many years of hopefully de minimis or really relatively small utility costs, maybe a hookup fee to utility. You might have some months where you're paying for a little bit of electricity. But generally speaking, that's how we start the process of the conversation with borrowers, so that you know that it's not going to cost you any more money out of pocket. We finance 100% of the systems. We consider the federal tax credit as part of that financing arrangement as well. So you don't have to write a check to have this projects done. We will finance all of it, and we'll make it so that hopefully it's cash neutral to you from a budget perspective until you pay that loan off, and then you're going to have some real benefits. So again, Green Penny, we're Midwestern too. We're headquartered in Northeast Iowa in a town called Decorah. We've got one of the highest solar adoption rates of any community in the country, very proudly so. And we not only are financiers of solar systems, we are users of them. Everybody on our team basically has, including our CEO and me as the president of Green Penny, we all have solar, and we are personally very big advocates. And again, want to see it make economic sense for you. So again, greenpenny.com, 888-G-PENNY-0. Please give us a call, look at our website, and let us know if you've got any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. I have to say, like, from a personal standpoint, Green Penny is great to work with. I remember when we first started working with Jason and Green Penny, and I was referring some folks to them who were looking at financing, and I said, "Oh yeah, you just give them a call," and they said, like on the phone? Like, we call them on the phone? Are you sure? I've never heard of that before. And I said, yeah, they have people there. And they called them the next day, and then they emailed me back and they said, hey, you were right. I did just have to call them. Good. So it was great. You guys have a really super fun to work with, and really appreciate you being here to answer some of the more tricky questions about the financial side, because I know more and more people are interested in financing now. So I'm really happy that you're able to provide that service for them.
Very good. Happy to answer questions for sure. Thanks, Sam.
Excellent. So now that we've talked a little bit about economics and financials, we're going to talk about how much do these solar arrays cost. I talked about how they've come down in price. They certainly are still not free by any stretch of the imagination. It's a very significant purchase, which is why you should really take the time to think about it. You should get educated like you're doing tonight. And I want to also point out that, one of the benefits of joining a group buy, not only, as we said before, is, you get this extra layer of education and customer service, but ultimately what we want to do here is we want to just simplify the process. We want to make it really, really easy for anybody in Dane County that wants to go solar to be able to. So what Renew does, what MadiSUN does, we select experienced, reputable contractors, like Stanley, like Full Spectrum as well, to do these systems. Both Arch and Full Spectrum have a ton of experience. They understand all the local permitting. They work with the utilities a lot and know what they're doing. They know how to make these projects happen really fast and really easily. Another thing that we do is we're able to bring a bunch of homeowners together from the same time to purchase systems and to purchase equipment all at once. So by doing that, we're able to lower the cost a little bit through sort of economies of scale. We're able to bring down the price a little bit as well. And then, of course, like I said, we do provide that extra layer of customer service and education as well to make the process as easy as possible. And I hope that it is easy, because this is something that we really strive for. And this group buy method has proven itself time and time again to be very popular and to be very effective. So this is a list of all the group buys in Wisconsin. This was from last year. I don't think all of these are necessarily in effect this year, but these are all the group buys that took place last year. So as you can see, it's a pretty effective format to not only get the word out about solar, but also to, like I said, make the process easier and hopefully to give you a little bit of a cost reduction benefit in there as well. So speaking of cost reductions, we're going to talk first about some of the incentives that might be available to you if you're interested in purchasing a solar array. And the first thing, the first incentive, I should say, that we're going to look at is from Focus on Energy. If you aren't familiar yet with Focus, definitely as soon as this is over, go out and Google them. Maybe Grace, you can even drop the Focus on Energy link in the chat. So Focus provides dozens and dozens of energy efficiency programs. One of those programs happens to be a rebate for solar and for renewable energy. So for homeowners, if you qualify for a Focus incentive, you can get up to a $500 rebate. That rebate can actually be increased to $1,000 maximum if you happen to live in a rural residence, a rural zip code. I think most of us probably are from the Madison area, so it may not apply, but there's also, we can share those zip codes as well, and you can find out if you qualify for that rebate. Your home, your rooftop, however, does have to meet, like I said, some qualifications. So it needs to be less than 15% shaded, and it also has to face within 130 degrees of due south. So that takes care of pretty much all the rooftops out there. So basically, if your roof faces east, west, or south, and it's not too shaded, you should be able to qualify for that Focus on Energy rebate. The other big rebate or incentive that we talk about, and this one is even more significant because it represents a higher dollar amount, is the solar ITC, the solar investment tax credit. So right now, that tax credit from the federal government is at 26%. 2 years ago, I believe, I think it was 2019, I should say, that discount was, or that investment tax credit was at 30%. So it has been reduced. It is scheduled to be reduced again in 2023 down to 22%. And then in 2024, it is scheduled to be reduced down to 0%. So it goes away completely for residential installations. So if you are interested in installing solar, you're interested in getting a rebate, this is the year to do it. Next year is also, we expect, is going to be really big as well, because that's the last year, in theory, that the credits will last. There is always, of course, the possibility that Congress could extend those tax credits, possibly even increase them. We really, really hope that happens, but for right now, we kind of have to go with the information in front of us, and that is this schedule right here, which is at 26% this year, and then stepping down to 22% next year. So it's a really, it can represent a really big portion of your costs. If you, the only way, there aren't any qualifications for the federal investment tax credit, with the exception of you have to have a tax burden or a tax appetite. So for instance, if your 26% represents, let's just make the math easy and say $1,000, and let's say you don't pay $1,000 into federal taxes. Let's just say, again, to make the math easy, you only pay $800 in. You would not be able to get the full $1,000 back next year when you file your taxes, but you would be able to get 800 back. And then the year after, you can apply again and basically get the remaining 200. So that's how the federal tax credit works. Another thing too, both with the focus on energy incentive and the federal investment tax credit, those rebates, those incentives, they come off after you purchase your system. So if you're looking at costs, there's what we call like sort of the upfront costs, and then there's the out-of-pocket costs. But you do have to account for the full expenses of your system when you're looking to buy. So something to keep in mind there. I want to keep it rolling because we're a little bit behind, but now that we know some of the incentives that are available to us, we can do a sort of a cost calculator or cost exercise is what I like to call it. So an average size system in the Madison area is typically around 5 kilowatts. And again, average, typically solar systems cost right now for residential systems around $3 a watt. So this is just a hypothetical average. Your exact system is going to be custom designed to fit your own home's needs, but for just for estimation purposes, we're going to use this hypothetical 5 kilowatt array at about a $3 per watt cost. So that's going to be about $15,000. The focus on energy rebate, should you qualify for it, will reduce your cost by about $500, or 500, I should say exactly, not about 500. And then if we apply the federal investment tax credit as well, that reduces your out-of-pocket costs by almost an additional $4,000, $3,700. So that means your out-of-pocket cost then for this sort of average or hypothetical 5 kilowatt array is going to be about $10,000, a little under $11,000, let's say. So it represents, not quite a 30% discount, but it represents, at least a quarter discount from the total cost of the array. And again, that sort of ballpark figure, that's just an estimation. So your actual cost will really depend on the size of your system, and that depends on your consumption as well. Now that we know ballpark figure how much systems cost, we can calculate an average annual savings. So if we take that same hypothetical 5 kilowatt solar array, if we are in MG&E territory, which is I assume most of us, paying around 14 cents per kilowatt hour, that's going to represent a $900 savings per year. I should say that 5 kilowatt array is going to offset your electric needs on average by about $900. If you're in Alliant territory, it's going to be around $800. And if you're on a municipal utility like a Sun Prairie or a Wanatee, and you pay a little bit lower electric rate, that's going to equate to about a $700 per year savings. Now, this obviously varies quite a bit. It varies based on your utility. It varies based on the size of your array. It also varies based on the kind of weather we have every year, depending on, if we have a cloudy year or a sunny year as well. So that can definitely change, but this is, again, it's just kind of average to give you a ballpark figure of about how much you can expect to save. So now that we know how much our system costs and about how much per year we can save, we can calculate a payback rate or a return on investment time. So most homes, especially in the Madison area, typically pay for themselves. The most residential solar arrays, I should say, typically pay for themselves in about 10 years. Some are a little more, some are a little less. If you are on like a time of use rate, and that is where your electricity costs more at certain periods of the day, like at night or in the early mornings or on weekends, your electric rates are lower at those times, and then they're much higher during sort of like peak hours, which would be like in the afternoons and the early evenings when a lot of folks are using electricity. So if you go on to something like that, you can actually reduce it even more, maybe down to 8 years. If you have a smaller array that's maybe a little shaded, or if we have some cloudy years, it might be closer to 12 years or something like that. But 10 years is like a pretty good ballpark figure, in my opinion. And that equates to over $20,000 in savings over the lifespan. If they pay for themselves in 10 years and these systems are lasting, 25, 30 years, that's going to equate to some pretty serious savings over the lifetime of the system. And that's not even factoring in potential rate increases as well. So there's potential for a lot of savings with these systems too. Finally, before I move on to the last part, we're going to talk about extras. A lot of folks now are interested in electric vehicles. With that comes electric vehicle charging. Another way that you can actually increase your return on investment time is by installing a slightly larger solar array and offsetting not only your electric needs, but also your transportation or your fuel costs as well. I don't know if anybody's been to the gas station lately, but gas is pretty expensive. So this is a way for you to not only be even more green, if that is your interest, but maybe more importantly, a way to actually save even more money, save on your electricity bills and on your bills at the gas station, if you want to call it that. The other kind of extra that we look at is batteries. Batteries are really expensive. Some people, though, do want batteries. Generally, those people are the kind of folks that either want the newest thing, or they also are maybe a little bit like me and just want to have the peace of mind that, when the electricity goes out, even though it doesn't happen often, you're still able to power your home and to kind of use your resources that way. So batteries are an option as well. Definitely more on the expensive side, but if you're interested, we can certainly talk about that. So I think I'm over time. Not even really paying super close attention, but I'm going to move on to the last step here. And that's probably what most of you want to know. What does the installation process look like? So step number one, I think most of you have already done this, but if you haven't, that would be to sign our I'm interested form. Grace can put that in the chat if you haven't already done so. Second would be a phone call from us here at MadiSUN. We sort of take a preliminary look at your home and your electric use. We let you know, if your rooftop, is too shaded for solar. We give you some ballpark figures on, what your system size is going to be. Is it going to be, 5 kilowatts? Is it going to be 10 kilowatts? Is it going to be something else? Based on that, we can kind of give you some ballpark figures on, costs and things like that. And then that can hopefully save you some time. If everything sounds good, then you can move on to the next step. If it seems too much for you, then you can avoid some of those other steps down the road, and we can just make the process, like I said, a lot easier for you. If our pre-assessment does come out well and it comes out favorable for you, what would happen is we schedule an assessment with Stanley or with one of our solar contractors. They would do a much more thorough evaluation of your roof, of your electric panel, would give you more details about the exact solar panels and microinverters and things like that they would install. Then they would issue you a proposal that would sort of clarify all of that other information and create sort of a prepackaged deal for you. And then if that looks good, what would happen is they would issue you a contract, and then you would sign the contract, and then the solar would be installed. Now, this process can take a while, especially this time of year. A lot of folks are interested in solar for their homes, mainly because of that federal ITC that we talked about. So the entire process can take some time, but ironically, step number 6, the construction of the solar array, typically only takes about a day or maybe 2 days if the weather isn't cooperating great, or if something else, there's a little snafu in there. But for the most part, construction only takes about a day or two. It's all of the other work. It's the pre-design, and it's the procuring the materials and things like that can extend these project times. But for the most part, construction goes really fast, really well, and that's basically the steps to installing. So Stanley, if I've missed something in that steps to installation process, please correct me right now.
Yeah, I'd say between number 5 and 6, there's about 8 weeks of waiting on the utilities and different authority having jurisdictions, City of Madison or the county or something like that, just to process all the paperwork that's involved. So they have the same backlogs that everybody else does. It takes longer to get a burrito at Chipotle, so it takes longer to get a permit. And it's really just because more people are requesting those services right now. I would say that at least for us, we have panels and microinverters in stock, so there isn't really a need for us to order a bulk of the equipment. One exception, and I think this is across the board for installers I've spoken to, if you need an electrical panel upgrade, some of those pieces are pushing out multiple months. And if that's the case, there are ways that, at least for us at Arch Solar, that we will work with you to either hold the entire installation up until we can get that equipment, or potentially kind of get done what we can while we wait. It's really only for folks right now that have a panel upgrade. So their main breaker panel in their house that we're seeing a lot of delays for.
Excellent. Thanks, Stanley. Now that I've kind of talked about the process, I also want to introduce our other guest tonight, and that's Matt. Matt is he's a former MadiSUN participant. He has solar installed on his home, and he can give you all the juicy details that I left out, or, trying to talk about how the sausage is made, so to speak. Matt, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
You're very welcome. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you great.
It's always a good idea to check, so I'm not just speaking on mute. I actually didn't prepare anything. I could tell you that I've been pretty happy. I've been thinking about solar for a long time, actually, like the 70s, but I came to the point where it just seemed like a really good time to do it. Had a little bit of money in savings that I'm going to be retiring soon, so it's better to do it now rather than wait until I'm on limited income. Had 3 different estimates done. I chose Stan at Arch Electric, and as you said, the longest time was waiting for the permits to come through. The deciding what sizes. I've got about a 10 kilowatt array, 28 to 365 watt panels. I was just looking at it today, and the peak I've hit so far, they were installed last September. So the peak I've hit so far has been 8.1 or 8.2 kilowatts, kilowatt hours in an hour, so kilowatts in an hour. So it's, that's actually pretty good for the things, considering I've got panels facing mostly east and some south. The south ones are shaded in the morning, but produce really well once that is gone. Got a nice curve on a good day. Since there's none to the west, they do stop producing, or they slow down rather quickly once the sun passes about, after like 5 or 6 o'clock, but continues on for some time. And yes, the installation was extremely quick, including all the wiring and putting the boxes and stuff. I'm pleased. The geek in me is pleased with the online dashboard, where I can look at what each panel's doing and how much I'm producing for the day. I can see how much I'm using as well, which is actually very useful to see in 15-minute increments how my electric usage is over the day. So, and I'd be willing to answer any questions people have other than that. It's like,
well, thanks, Matt. I really appreciate that. Really like having the kind of direct insight of the homeowner to talk about, exactly maybe what happened with their process as well. So so thanks for being here. And I just did want to point out to all the listeners that we have arrived at the Q&A part. We've also arrived back at that slide that I mentioned earlier of my parents' array in northern Minnesota. So now that I've addressed that and pointed that out, Grace, would you mind kind of shifting gears, and we can answer some of the questions that folks have been asking?
As of right now, most questions have been answered in the chat, so no new questions to answer. But yeah, like Sam said, feel free to jot down anything. Yeah.
I guess I'll just ask Matt a quick question then, and that is, what was one part of the installation process that kind of surprised you, either good or bad, I would say?
Well, actually, I wasn't expecting it to only take a day, and well, it was actually 2 different days. One day everything was up, and then the next day it was connected. That that was a bit surprising. I've done construction over the years. I've done a lot of that work on my place, everything from foundation work to roofing and electric, plumbing, etc. And it was it's very pleasant to have it ready to go once the papers were signed and the permits were in.
That sounds great. Stanley, what are kind of the wait times that you're having with Arch right now? I know, like I said, that we've had a lot of popularity this year, probably because of the ITC. Maybe you have some more insight. Maybe there's other reasons as well. I'm sure there are, but you know, what are the reasons you're hearing people are signing up this year and going solar, either within the group buy or outside of the group buy? And what are your wait times looking like right now?
Yeah, I'll start. The wait times are changing pretty rapidly for us, but we're currently at about 16 weeks. So that's sometimes, I believe that's September, October. We do have a partnership that I don't know if we've announced yet, so I got to be really careful. But if that's announced soon, that is a whole lot of houses that will be thrown into the mix, and our wait times could extend. But I think that one thing I would mention for a lot of folks is if you're thinking about solar and you're gonna need a month or two to figure it out, I really wouldn't rush your decision. I would take that month or two, because the difference of 4% in the tax credit, one, we don't know what'll happen at the end of the year. They may extend it. I watched in 2015, I watched C-SPAN with a stack of proposal templates on my desk about 1.5 inches thick, and watch them extend it. Then maybe you could argue it was a different time, but if it isn't extended, 22% is still a lot of money. So installing next year is still going to be great, and I think a lot of installers, ourselves included, are going to be eager to fill up the early part of 2023. And so I guess I would say take the time to do your homework and go with the equipment and installer that you're comfortable with, more regardless of the tax credit expiration. Like don't fall victim to the rush tactic that a lot of folks use, would be something I'd say.
That's an excellent point to make. I think I saw in the chat also, it asked, are arrays installed at any time of the year, or are there only certain times of the year when you install? Can you talk about that?
Our installers, a lot of them prefer to install in the winter because you can always layer up and put gloves on, but you can't really do anything about the heat that won't, you know, cause the boss to get an awkward phone call that you're not wearing a shirt on the job or something like that, right? So I think there are days where the wind is too much. You know, these things are like big sales. So I think that is very it's probably a handful of days winter as opposed to the majority of them. And
Gotcha.
I think
Great.
I see a question from Justin.
Yeah, Grace,
there.
I was going to ask if there, I think I've seen a few questions pop up, but do you want to take them maybe in order? Because I haven't been paying that close of attention.
Yeah, for sure. There's one from Michael. They want to know what age of roof is recommended. And so, for example, if the roof is 10 to 12 years old, should they wait to replace before installing solar? And then kind of going along with that one from Lisa, this is what happens when and if you need a new roof. So yeah, maybe some roofing questions to be.
I'd be happy to answer that. So the type of roof is obviously going to have a pretty big impact. If you have a metal roof, obviously they can last a lot longer. But with the typical asphalt shingled roof, if you've got, you know, 5 years to 10 years left on the roof, I'd say it's a really good idea to just go ahead and have it replaced a little bit early. But if you've got 10 to 15 or something to that extent, there are people that will go ahead and install the panels and then just plan on in 15 years paying an installer to come out, pull those panels off of the roof, and have a roofer come in, put the roof in, and then put the panels back on. Some people at that time may choose if it's 15 years down the road, they may choose to even upgrade their system. Sounds kind of crazy, but I've already seen it happen with systems that were installed back in 2008, 2010. I've seen people asking to replace that equipment. So I imagine that'll continue. But I would say if you're trying to price that out, a typical residential system is 1 to 2 days of labor for 2 people to pull those panels off and reinstall them. So if you have a much larger system, maybe you double that. In terms of the labor rates right now, they're around $110 an hour. In 15 years, they'll probably be 7,000. I really, sorry, I shouldn't have said that, but they will. I mean, we don't know what they'll be, but I'm glad somebody got my labor rate joke. But
well, this is Jason. I was the one who was laughing at that. So
yeah,
just things to add for financing. We will at Green. There are ancillary installation costs no matter what. So, for example, my system, I had to install an access panel in my garage in order for the folks to get up into the attic of the garage in order to install the system. So there's always some ancillary costs, and as long as the roof, if you have to update a roof or make some updates to the section that is where the panels are going to be installed, as long as that's not more than the solar system itself. In other words, it doesn't become a roof loan, it's a solar loan still. We will incorporate that into the solar financing. So just so everybody knows, we get that question, I think, literally every day. And if we need to update the shingles that are underneath the part where the panel is going to be installed, that's we are told also covered by the installation of the solar system, and therefore can be incorporated into the federal income tax credit. Consult your tax advisor to make sure that's true, but that's what we are told. So anyway, as part of our Green Penny solar financing, we will finance the portion of the roof that needs to be improved in order to get the solar installed.
Excellent. Grace, what is the next question?
Yeah, going in order, we have one from Jeff. They want to know if the system has to be installed and running by the end of the year or just started to receive that 26% credit.
Yeah, for residential installations, it has to be installed and connected. Commercial has a little bit more lenient regulations because the commercial industry always gets kind of favoritism, in my opinion. But yeah, for residential installation, it has to be installed and interconnected with the utility by December 31st. Stanley, do you have anything more to add to that?
I would never want to provide anything construed as tax advice. And I think that your interpretation is the one that is the most prudent. And
totally right. The best advice that we can give, as we're a bank and we give financial advice every day, is to consult a tax advisor. Make sure that you have the tax liability that will allow you to benefit from the tax credit in the first place. And then second, it might be over multiple years, which your tax advisor will tell you. And third, what is included, what parts of the project are included in the federal tax credit. We tell customers that every single day. Please consult a tax advisor. If you have, and Stanley would never do this, and Full Spectrum would never either, because we know them really, really well, but there are articles online and things online that you will see where there are installers that are telling people that the government's basically going to write them a check. That is not true. You need to consult a tax advisor to make sure you understand how the tax rebate, the tax refund will work for you. Please do that. I'm echoing what Stanley just said, because it's really, really important. There's a lot of misinformation out there about that.
Excellent.
Awesome. Yeah, so some other questions. One from David says they are currently building, they have walls and a roof. Does that change or impact anything? I'm not exactly sure.
The timing, yeah.
For Stanley.
Yeah, I would say depending on whether or not the home will have an electrical panel and at least roughed in electrical before the end of the year. And depending on what kind of building plans and things you can provide, it may be a wonderful thing that your home is being built right now. Some things you could do, you could run a 1-inch or a 1.25 inch conduit from the roof that will have solar panels down to your breaker panel location. And that'll allow us to avoid an external conduit run. If you take care of that, I think a lot of installers might even knock a few $100 off your system cost. That would need to be appropriate EMT, like electrical conduit, ideally installed by an electrician that knows how to support it appropriately and all that. But if the walls are open, it's a great time to run conduit and to have things. So maybe if there's a room, the room where you have your breaker panel, don't finish that room if that was going to be part of your scope of work. Maybe wait to finish that room until the solar install is done, especially if drywall is involved. I really wish more basements had wood paneling. I'm just going to start trying to get that to be popular because it's a lot easier to work with than drywall. So something else to think about, I guess, if you have a space where you have like a recessed breaker panel, stuff like that. If you have a meter that's inside, that's really common in Madison, actually. My house was built in the 60s and we had to have the meter upgraded and moved outside when we went solar. So there's those sorts of weird things. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little off topic, but that just got me thinking along those lines.
Thanks, Stanley. I see we're at 8:05, so I'm gonna leave the time open for one more question. Stanley, Jason, if you could both put your emails in the chat, that would be great. Grace, you can put mine and yours in as well in case there are other questions if you think of something after. But I think we have time for one more question, Grace, if you have one more.
Yeah, one from Lisa that I guess maybe I've been hearing often on phone calls I've had with some folks. They want to know if you later buy an electric car, or I guess something else that would significantly increase your electric use, how much you could make without hitting that MG&E generating limit, and I guess how hard would it be to expand or add on panels in the future?
Yeah, so a couple things with an EV, I'll give you some really quick math you can use. If you have like a typical Chevy Bolt or Nissan Leaf type egg type car, hatchback, not some race car or anything like that. If you drive that car 10,000 miles and you charge all 10,000 miles at home over the course of a year, you're somewhere in the 3,000 kilowatt hours a year in my estimation. We have a spreadsheet if you're really interested and you want to tell us what vehicle you think you're going to get. And when you drive, we can actually map that out throughout the year for you and all that. In terms of how it impacts the size of your system, with MG&E, it's exports versus imports. It's not just production versus consumption. So we're getting into the weeds and I don't have a whiteboard. I do have a whiteboard, but I don't think I'd be able to allow myself to show you that how messy my home desk is. So if you'll just kind of bear with me, if you have over the course of a year with MG&E, if you have 1 kilowatt hour of excess exported to the grid, then for that next month, you're now a net exporter and you're penalized fairly heavily in that buyback rate. So what we try to do is size your system based on either today's consumption or just make you aware that for the first year before you buy the electric car or while you're waiting for them to build it, you're going to have some diminishing returns. Your savings aren't going to be as good as we're projecting. And if you're comfortable taking that risk for that year or that 6-month period, then we can definitely install a larger system than you need today. After talking through how many kilowatt hours you might need. As far as adding panels later, in-phase microinverters, which are what we use, they make it incredibly easy to add panels later, but they don't make it cheap to add panels later. So it is technically very viable to add 4 or 6 or 8 panels 3 or 5 years from now. You will pay more for those 3 to 5 panels than you did for the first 15 or 20. If you're doubling your system size 5 years down the road, that might be a different story. It might actually, it might pencil out just about the same. So that was kind of a long-winded answer. And I think I touched on all of the thoughts. And I mean, I would stay longer for what it's worth. Like I already ate dinner. You put this at a very convenient time. So if anyone has any other questions.
Always thinking about your meal schedules, Stanley.
Yeah,
that was, no, I'm just teasing. I'm sorry. I'm going to actually end it here because I think we've covered a lot. I want to be respectful of all of our panelists' time. Jason, Stanley, Matt, thank you so much for joining me. And to all the folks that called in as well on this very lovely evening. Thank you so much. The webinar has been recorded, so we can post it later on. If there's something you missed or something you want to go back and review later on, it will be available on the MadiSUN website under the events tab. So please, if you missed something, come and check it out later on. You have all of our emails, so if you have a specific question for anyone, or even if it's a general question, we can certainly forward it on to whoever is most skilled to answer that question. Please reach out. This is, we're here for a reason. And just thank you again so much for joining us, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.